From the moment we learned that Rush Limbaugh was part of a group bidding to buy the St. Louis Rams, I knew the pundits would come charging onto the field and debate his fitness as an NFL owner. And there was an added twist to this high-decibel argument. A bogus quote about slavery attributed to Rush that started with a book, made it to Rupert Murdoch's Australian newspaper last month, and then to ESPN, CNN, MSNBC, and some major newspapers. Now that the media furor has prompted Limbaugh to withdraw from the group trying to buy the football franchise, this question remains. Should a penalty flag be thrown on some of the journalists who tackled this story? I spoke earlier with Mike Wilbon, the Washington Post sports columnist and co-host of ESPN's Pardon the Interruption. Mike Wilbon, welcome.
Thank you, Howie.
Let me play for you something you said on Pardon the Interruption soon after the news broke that Rush Limbaugh was part of a team trying to buy the St. Louis Rams.
I don't know whether Rush Limbaugh is a straight-up bigot or he simply plays one on TV and radio, but he is universally reviled by black people in this country.
So maybe a straight-up bigot, universally reviled by black people. In retrospect, do you think you went a little too far?
No, universally reviled by African Americans. That's no surprise. Anybody who wants to walk down any boulevard in predominantly African American communities will find that out very, very quickly, Howie. No, that assessment's a very easy one to make.
But when you say he may be a straight-up bigot, you're saying he didn't like black folks.
He may be. I mean, if you listen to what he says on his show, and I stopped a long time ago, and I can't sit and tell you specifics of what he said. Meeting him in person is one thing I have. Communicating with him one-on-one is one thing. His radio persona, which is all that most people have of Rush Limbaugh, particularly black people in this country, that's a different perception, and I would not back away from that comment at all.
All right, let's talk a little bit about this alleged slavery comment. Now, this was purported to have been said some years ago by Limbaugh. Slavery built the South. I'm not saying we should bring it back. I'm just saying it had its merits. Let me briefly run through the chronology here. This was published in a book about 3 years ago. It made it onto Wikipedia, the online encyclopedia, and then it was picked up, once the Rams story broke, by Brian Burwell in the St. Louis Post-Dispatch, Drew Sharp in USA Today, CNN's Rick Sanchez, and then you mentioned it on your ESPN program. What happened then?
I did. I got an email. Again, I have met Rush, and while there's not necessarily a relationship there, we know how to reach each other. He reached out and said, hey, didn't say this, do not believe it, don't know how this got started, although I'm trying to trace the origin of this statement. Don't believe that. It doesn't what I reflect what my beliefs are about slavery. And I read the emailed him back, and we had an exchange. And I said I took him at his word. I was not going to be able to sit down and verify everything that is said, because as you know, Howie, there's a lot out there that's said that is attributed to Rush. I have listened to his show. I've heard a lot of things. I'm not sitting there with a notebook writing them down.
Right.
So I cannot verify that he said that.
In this case, there is no evidence that he made this particular slavery comment. Do you think you should have checked before putting it on the air?
No question. And I told Rush that. That's a journalistic no-no. But if I had checked and found out the information that we have basic access to every day on Deadline, I might have done it anyway. Still, that's wrong and a journalistic no-no, and I said that to him.
All right, let's look at what let's take a look at what Limbaugh had to say about this whole slavery business and the coverage of his now defunct bid to be part of the Rams ownership. Let's take a look at that.
This kind of stuff, this misreporting, malreporting, lying, repeating the lies while also saying Limbaugh denies, repeating the made-up quotes, the blind hatred, and believe me, the hatred that exists in this is found in the sports writer community. It's found in the news business.
Does he have a point?
He had a point in that smaller area about that quote. Let's not make it seem like Rush Limbaugh has not insulted black people on his radio show. He's done it for years and years and years. And it's not just black people that know that, Howie. I mean, the commissioner of the NFL, Roger Goodell, knows it. Otherwise, he wouldn't have made the statements he made. Jimmy Irsay, owner of the Colts, he knows it. Otherwise, he would not have come out and said publicly, I would not vote for this guy. Millions of black people know this, which is why they feel about Rush Limbaugh the way they feel. It's not arbitrary. People just didn't pick out Rush Limbaugh and said, oh, let's be angry at Rush because of nothing.
But on this point about the slavery, and there was also another alleged quote for which there's no evidence about saying something nice about James Earl Ray, I don't think it's enough to come back the next day and say, well, here's Rush's denial. I think if you don't have any evidence to back it up, you need to retract it and apologize. Well, let's talk about something that Rush Limbaugh did say famously.
I agree with you, which is why I did that to him.
But not everybody has done that. I just wanted to make that point. Let's talk about something Limbaugh did say famously 6 years ago when he was briefly an ESPN color commentator, and that was about Donovan McNabb. And he said, I think the media has been very desirous that a black quarterback do well. A lot of people pointed to that as evidence that, well, he's some kind of racist. Wasn't he really talking there about the media?
It's his interpretation. I didn't think that is not in the top 300 things that I would object to, that I would find objectionable or offensive that Rush Limbaugh has said about somebody of African-American descent. So, I mean, that was one thing that people who, in the sports context, all of a sudden were exposed to Rush Limbaugh, who may not listen to his show, may not be as familiar with him, and they went, wow, this seems a little off-center of what we normally hear, and they held on to that. Again, that is not probably in the top 1,000 things, if I could go back and chronicle the shows, that I would find offensive of his comments.
Right. Well, he's said a number of things over the years, inflammatory things that I disagree with. But when this whole debate erupted about, was he fit to be even a minority owner in the St. Louis Rams, I'm thinking, the National Football League, Michael Vick gets to go in the National Football League. There are a lot of owners and players who have done things that are not exactly stuff we'd heap praise on.
I would agree with you there, Howie. My take on his whole ownership bid was this. The market will determine whether or not you wind up being an owner. And if the club you're trying to get into, if its members say, no, we don't want you, you have to live with that. Rush Limbaugh's out there every day judging, passing judgment, turning thumbs up or thumbs down on whether somebody's fit or worthy to be involved in some activity in this country. He is subject to the same rules, if you will, in that context. And in this case, the market said no, it didn't want to sell what Rush was buying, and he has to live with that. And I would defy anybody to tell me that that's not fair.
But to what extent, I've got about half a minute here, did the media uproar over this, and it's being debated on every cable show and every sports radio show, contribute to a climate where the NFL just felt it could not touch Rush with a 100-foot football field?
Plenty.
Couldn't let him on the football field, I should say.
Plenty, Howie. Just like he helps. Remember, Rush is the media. Rush is mainstream media. So just like any other debate, Rush and his conversation on his show contribute to that same sort of
and he loves to stir up controversy.
Yes, he does. And this time, that's what I'm saying. You can't all of a sudden say, wait a minute, I'm outside of controversy when you help create it every day and very successfully and very smartly, by the way, for those who listen to Rush's show. No, you can't then say the rules won't apply to me. I don't think, to be fair, that Rush is saying that. I in our conversation, that was not what I sensed. So he, again, put himself out there subject to national debate, and the debate said, no, we don't want it.
Right. Well, the St. Louis Rams story is over, but the controversy very certainly is not. Mike Wilbon, thanks very much for joining us.
Thanks, Howie.